Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for another segment of Conversations with Carmen. I am so excited to be joined today by another one of my esteemed colleagues, Leslie Santana, licensed marriage and family therapist. Thank you so much for joining me, Leslie. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Wonderful. Yeah, so am I. So congratulations, Provider Spotlight for August 2023. It's a wonderful accomplishment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, all right, so let's dive right in. I think my first question for you, and this is a little bit of an open-ended question, but what brought you to the mental health industry, the clinical realm, the therapeutic realm? What led you here?
I think in college, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to study. I wanted to be a nurse. I thought that was the route I was going to go, and I volunteered at my local hospital, and I was kind of like the nurse's assistant there. Like, they would just send me to go check in and, ask the patient this and ask the patient this. And I found that I really enjoyed just sitting there and talking and getting to know them. And I don't know, I think from there I started to wonder like what else I could do that would just help me do that. And I studied psychology, and then it was pretty fast after that I was like, I'm going to apply to an MFT program. And
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm aware that you worked for the city of Chino for a bit, and then you transitioned to Department of Mental Health work. So what are you willing to share with us about those two journeys?
Anything. I mean, I think both of them were really wonderful experiences. They were both very different places to work at. I feel like in, working for the DMH contracted agency that I was at, I think that's where I started to develop my confidence as a therapist, but it was definitely still a lot of unknown, and I don't know, it just needed a lot of guidance. But I think that's when I definitely started to kind of think about the therapist that I wanted to be, although I was obviously still, collecting hours and learning as much as I could.
Absolutely. And I know that one of your specialty areas ended up being using PCIT in your work. Even I want to say, well, does it extend as far back as pre-licensure, or did you really? Yeah. Okay. What can you tell us about PCIT? What is it for those individuals who don't know, and then how have you incorporated it into your practice?
Yeah. PCIT stands for Parent-Child Interactive Therapy. Yeah. It is a life-based type of therapy. So it's not your typical, session where you sit with a client and you speak with them. You're in a room where there's a two-way mirror, and you really are. I mean, the goal of this therapy is to guide the parent and help the parent use more effective skills and tools to interacting overall with their children. But usually parents come in with some kind of behavioral complaints, emotional behaviors that are coming up for their children. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when, if and when you may have encountered a scenario where a parent was either self-conscious about being in a two-way mirror situation, or was just confused or a little thrown off by, what do I do? What do I say? How did you typically help guide them and navigate them through that?
Yeah. I think as with any approach, you spend a lot of time building rapport at the beginning. Obviously, your client is your child, but your rapport that you really need to establish is with the parent, because that's who you will be working with. And so, as a telehealth therapist, my PCIT sessions are online as well. But in your, typical PCIT, you would still be conducting your one-on-one rapport building sessions in your PCIT room, so they become familiar with them, but you're not leaving them alone in the room. You're still helping them kind of get a feel for what the room looks like, and what you can even do some trial sessions in there, but you really are kind of addressing any and all concerns regarding PCIT because it is a very different form of therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, well, I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. I'm going to jump around because there are
Okay.
so many there's so many wonderful facets to having this conversation with you. I'm just excited. So, switching gears just a little bit, you shared with me that you are part of a military family. So, your husband is a Marine, and I know that during your cultivating not only your practice but cultivating your career trajectory in general, you guys have had to move a couple of times. And I'm just wondering, what was that experience like for you? What were some of your takeaways? How did having to navigate responding to his orders to move, how did that intersect with you continuing to thrive as a professional and build on your practice?
Yeah. I think anyone or any spouse in general probably finds it hard the first year. I think the first year is always really challenging because it's just a lot of unknown, a lot of readjusting that you have to do. And after that year, I think you just start to get used to it. But yeah, I mean, when we had to move, I was newly licensed. I actually was working with soul tenders, but I hadn't been around for long.
Right.
So it was a hard decision to make. But I think I didn't know how much my career would have to take the backseat then that I do now, and it has. And I think, fortunately with the pandemic, I think it accelerated telehealth services. And so that has allowed me to, we've relocated again since then, and I am still able to have my clients. I have clients that I've worked with for 2 years, in 2 different states. And thankfully, I think, because of that accessibility, I've been able to kind of keep some consistency in my work and continue working on it. Yeah. But I think it definitely did take a hard backseat early on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I can imagine. And, talk about having to pivot. I think that I would say, a major collective takeaway for most, if not all of us throughout the entire pandemic was learning how to flip the script or learning how to pivot. And, I think that it's definitely a shared experience, but then a very individual, respective experience as well. But just having to shift and be that much more flexible and think outside of the box, think maybe even more creatively, and sort of just shift the lens that you're looking through in order to keep going. So it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think all of us as therapists have had to do that because of the pandemic, but I think it's been such a blessing though, to be able to do telehealth and just to have that accessibility.
Absolutely. And I think I remember you sharing with me that one of the places that you and your family relocated to for a bit was North Carolina. And did you tell me that you worked for Child Protective Services out there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. What can you tell us about your experience with CPS in a completely different territory? What was that like?
I wasn't able to apply for reciprocity because I was newly licensed. So I thought, what's the next thing that I could do that I could kind of continue working, with people and families. And so I was onboarded pretty quickly with CPS as soon as I got there. And there's definitely a need. I think there's a need anywhere. Yeah. And I got to working really fast. It was during the pandemic as well. It was a harsh reality, I think, to face at that time and learn because, I think I mentioned this, as a therapist, you kind of already come in as an ally with your clients. Right. Like they are coming to you because they want your help and they maybe just need someone to listen. Yeah. But when you're a CPS worker, you really are coming in as an enemy. And I don't think any family, like even if I were to put myself in their shoes, would think otherwise. Yeah. So that was really challenging to learn how to navigate. And I think it was helpful for me to learn because it helped me see, I think, a side of working with people and families that I hadn't seen. I think I was a little bit naive in that way before, but it was really challenging. You know, there's a lot of poverty, substance use out there. And so just navigating that was challenging. But I feel like it really did, coming back into being a therapist, I see families in a completely different way.
I was just about to ask you that. And I'm wondering, you know, not to delve too deeply or overly deeply, but I'm wondering when you were faced with those unique sets of challenges, you know, working with CPS and working with, you know, particular demographics, did the actual frontline in the trenches work that you were exposed to, did that help to sort of debunk or demystify any preconceived notions you might have had in terms of working with that particular population, or any of your preconceived notions put to the challenge, so to speak? Or did you go in there as more of a blank canvas?
I think I went in there thinking the families, and especially I was the only Spanish speaking, I was only Hispanic, you know, in our office. There were very few cases that came in that required a Spanish speaking worker. But I thought, you know, here I am, I'm going to walk in, you know, this Hispanic family, and we're going to build a relationship, and I'm going to help them out. And, you know, I want them to feel supported. That was not the case at all, ever, with anybody. It took a really long time. And sometimes, you know, that support had to come from somewhere else. Like, it just was never going to be me. And I think that's what I mean, that I was a little bit naive, thinking that, you know, and people did have a right to be maybe even defensive and very guarded because they were protecting their family. I think I didn't quite understand that, being a therapist. And even though I had worked with families for a handful of years at that point, you know, in the DMH contracted agency that I was with. Yeah.
You know, what also comes to mind for me is in a very real way, it's almost like you have to earn a client's trust. And a lot of times, per your experience, the client is the family. So we have to earn our way in. We have to ask, may I put my foot through your door? And then may I bring the other foot right behind it? You know, and so it can be very humbling, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the tools that I thought I would use, they didn't work because it's just a different situation. I think. I did have to do a lot of asking permission, a lot of respecting their boundaries. You know, if it wasn't, there were things that social services was asking of me to complete, like, you know, you have to do a walkthrough of the houses, making sure monitors are working and all of these things. But sometimes, you know, there's a fine line between respecting that and saying, you know what, I'll come and do this next week if right now is not a good time.
For sure.
So there's a lot of doing that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. Myself, I worked for, you know, California DCFS for almost 3 years. And I remember going through the training academy, and I'll never forget the trainer. I think it was day one of the training, said, well, you know, the show of hands who are MFTs, raise my hand. Show of hands who are social workers, raise your hand. And they spoke to the MFTs and said, well, this might be more of a challenging journey for you because you're just more clinically minded and more, you know, not as macro, more micro oriented. And it was a challenge because I was literally, such as yourself, working in a different capacity. Wasn't there to do therapy. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so I'm gonna shift gears again. Okay. So in addition to being trained in PCIT, you're also EMDR certified, right?
Yes, I'm trained in EMDR. Yes.
Okay, all right. And how do you incorporate EMDR into your practice these days?
I think I incorporate it in most of my clients. I don't do necessarily the eye movements or, you know, the step-by-step EMDR sessions. I do with a handful, but I use it because I think EMDR, the way EMDR conceptualizes presentations and cases is really, for me, it looks at everything, the whole picture, past, the present, the future, you, the people around you, the world, your body, your mind. And I think whenever I get stumped with a client or I come to a place where I really need to kind of reconceptualize, if I explore all of these points, I usually have a good answer and direction where to go.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. All right. No, that's great. That's wonderful. And I know that we also talked a little bit about, I think I'd asked you a question along the lines of just what your theoretical orientation is of sorts. And you did speak to a few, but then it kind of all came back to, but, primarily I lead with a person-centered approach. I'm very person-centered. Yeah, I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that a bit for us. What do you mean?
Something that stuck with me is that when I was in grad school, we would see a lot of, videos of therapists conducting therapy. And I always noticed that the older the therapist, the more person-centered they were. And I thought that was weird because for me, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a CBT therapist, right? Because we talk a lot about that.
Right.
It is very helpful. But I think I say that I feel like I'm more person-centered because I really like to take steps back in sessions and in my work. I think when I start to kind of pull in and stress and feel like I need to fix, that's when I just don't feel like I'm aligned with my role. Right. So I feel like I always need to take steps back, and that always goes it always goes back to the client. So where is the client right now? What is coming up for them? Absolutely. What do they think about what they're going through? Right. Absolutely. It's not about what I think what direction we should take. I mean, obviously we do guide a little bit. Yes. But yeah, in that sense of I do like for my clients to lead me where they think is important. And sometimes that means, talking about something that's important to them that I'm like, this is, this isn't a big deal or whatever it is. Right. Yeah. But yeah.
For sure. No, that makes sense.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say something in EMDR that I learned was that regardless of what the truth is, the reality of it, we go with what the client's truth is.
Yes. Yes.
And that's our truth. As far as I know, your truth is my truth. And I think that really helps get them to where they need to go on their own time, at their own pace. Yeah.
That is it. I love that. Taking that approach is just beneficial and advantageous for the client on so many levels. Everything from establishing trust and rapport to modeling for them what it's like to respect and honor where they are, to maintaining your integrity as a clinician. I tell clients a lot, especially clients who I start working with who are newer to the therapy process. It's a little bit of education about this is what you can expect. And I tell them, one thing to really understand is that I'm not here to spearhead this process. I'm not here to lead, I'm here to guide and support. But I literally am here to align myself with you and walk alongside of you, not to trail behind you and certainly not to lead. And when I break it down like that, they're like, oh, like, okay, so it's like, I'm going to meet you where you are. I absolutely love that. And so that kind of bleeds into the next question. I know that when we chatted initially, you talked about being, showing up as person-centered for sure. And then helping a client move that needle along through meaningful conversation. So that really resonates with me. So obviously you're a skilled and trained clinician, expert matter in several different areas. You know what to do at the end of the day. But at the same time, though, you just bringing your inherent ability to just learn and listen and join and meet them where they are, that promotes meaningful conversation. And I think that that's often the precursor to a client either having a breakthrough or having a moment of realization or having an epiphany, one of those wonderful aha moments. So I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on that meaningful conversation and how it can help them?
Yeah, I think, I mentioned this, that it's not about coming in and saying, we're going to have a meaningful conversation today. I think, Yeah, I had a client. What comes to my mind is I had a client who says, I know not all of our sessions are going to be these like great aha moments, but I do know that they're coming and we have had some. And I think it's more about that when we can both align and I can get to a place of understanding really what they're going through or leveling with them. I think it really facilitates that meaningful conversation that to them, it means something, right? They get something out of that conversation that they had never thought about before or saw in that way. But you do have to align with them before that happens. And I think that's where I focus on my role again as a person-centered approach of my goal is to align with them, to level with them, to kind of get, at eye level and really connect. Everything else will come after that. And sometimes that doesn't happen in our sessions and sometimes it does, because I think that's just the nature of human interaction. But yeah.
Absolutely. Because so much of life is, we can't, life is often not just a set of dotted lines, one after the other one, topsy-turvy, and sometimes we take, we digress a bit, and sometimes a lot of times we find our way back. And I always say this, I'm known for saying this, life is just it's just so nonlinear, and the more clients can embrace that, the better off they'll be just in terms of just being able to, manage their feelings and emotions and extend themselves grace and compassion. I talk to people like that, along those lines quite a bit, extending yourself that grace and compassion and understanding. Your journey is what it is, you know what I mean? And you're entitled to it, So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense. I have a question for you that I didn't plan on asking you, but it's just coming up. It's coming to mind for me right now. Countertransference. How do you navigate countertransference when it does come up or when it does surface?
This is where group supervision really comes in handy.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
usually, and I think our group lead, Erin, is really good at always kind of asking this question whenever we bring up cases. Well, what's coming up for you? Like, wait, we're talking about the client here.
Yeah.
But I think it's that that pull that we get sometimes as therapists to go in and try to fix and do more work than the client. And so we need to, I just really take mental notes of this is a client that I need to talk about. So I need help pulling back out. I think that's how I try to handle that countertransference. Yeah, wonderful. It takes a lot of, I think, support from my colleagues too. Like we work together, and I think this is something important. I think why group supervision is so important is that sometimes we need those moments to really, or that support from other therapists to say, hey, what's coming up for you? Because sometimes we don't think about that, and we definitely don't ask that question first all the time.
Right. Probably not often enough. What's coming up for me? It's because at the end of the day, our focus actually is on our client and, helping them or leaning into supporting them in their well-being. So I think we back burner ourselves more often than we realize, Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, but I think that's a process that will probably experience for the rest of my career.
All of us, we're human. You know what I mean? We have our own, we're all works in progress. We're all perfectly imperfect, as I like to say, so it's just it's a very fluid process. So yeah, I was just curious about that. We also chatted a little bit about your budding interest in becoming more adept, I guess, at working with clients with personality disorders. And so I'm wondering, what experience have you had thus far? And then what intrigues you about working with that particular population of clients?
I think I worked with maybe a handful of personality disorders back at the DMH agency, but I think with soul tenders, that has come up a lot for me, or at least I'm starting to really understand personality disorders in this role. And I think that part of the reason why is that because we are so clinical. Like we have the ability, we can afford to be very clinical with our clients. We can afford to spend time reading and spending as much time as we need to getting to know our clients. You know, at a DMH agency, you don't have that time. You don't have, there's a lot of pressure there. So I think it has allowed me to really kind of take my time when working with that population, those clients. And it's been challenging. I like a little bit of a challenge in my work. I think that helps, I don't know, me stay fresh and intrigued, I guess.
Absolutely.
So it's been, I don't know, that I'm thinking of my clients as I'm talking about this, and it's been a fun ride, challenging. And I really do, I would like to, get more formal training. As I research online, though, it seems to be that it's like the training for personality disorders. Like you're either taking like DBT courses. So again, I don't know. I look forward to being able to, get more training.
Absolutely. And I think there are more of our peers and colleagues who have even a slight intrigue in working with personality disordered clients, but let's face it, it can also be an intimidating prospect. And so I'm wondering, and, trying to think of the best way to answer the question or ask you the question, what would you say are innate or inherent attributes that you possess, sort of internally, that position you in such a way that, working with personality disorders is doable, is feasible? What do you think you or believe you naturally possess that you bring to the table that makes that journey that much more realistic and pursuable?
I do think that I can build good rapport, and not just, with clients. I think that I really do try to take steps back to be more present. And I think the older I get, I find that that's more and more important, more than anything else, with family, with my kids, with work, with my clients. So I think that is something that as I continue to work on strengthening that, I can now allow myself to do something that's a little bit more challenging. Because I do feel, and again, I'm really interested in getting some more formal training, but I do feel like you can use many different tools with personality disorders, but I find, and I feel like it has been my experience, that usually the rapport is a good predictor of that outcome of that treatment. And so I can focus on my rapport. I can work on improving that for myself and learning ways to do that. And it is a lot of self-reflection and checking in with myself of what's coming up for me and what does this look like in our sessions.
Absolutely. No, I completely concur. That rapport building, the ability to join and to establish even the slightest bit of a connection, and show up from day one and build on that. I think that speaks volumes, along with, obvious specific interventions and understanding and knowledge to boot. But what you lead in, what you come to the door with, that's incredible. Yeah. Okay.
I think something that really intrigued me from the beginning was that sometimes it's like simple statements that you have to repeat a lot. Like, I'm not perfect, but I'm here for you. I do care. Like all of these things I find that can be very powerful in working with personality disorders. And I like that because that's, I don't know, it's like, again, that human connection that they need.
Absolutely. And I think the repetition is necessary because, obviously what we know about personality disorders, access to in general, it's, you're working with their core. You're working with their essence. You know what I mean? It's not a syndrome. It's pretty much core. So, and not to say that you can't make, that you can't affect change. I'm definitely an optimist, but you're really having to help them delve deeply, and you have to take that deep dive along with them. So the repetition I have found over the years, has been very helpful. Just planting that seed. It's almost like speaking words of affirmation, over and I'm here for you. I'm aligned with you. I hear you. I understand, or I'm trying to understand, or I can imagine, or, so yeah, I definitely corroborate that. Yeah. Thank you for elaborating. That's great. Okay, a couple more questions for you. So I quoted you as saying mental health is not a destination, it's a process. It's about how you drive, not where you're going. I love that. So what can you say about that?
I think it's about, and like you mentioned earlier, like life has its ups and downs. Whatever one's journey is, somebody else has a different journey. And I think oftentimes it's hard not to ruminate on what those challenges and what life has brought for you in your life look like. But I think it's how you navigate. It's how you're driving within that life, within that destination that brings that joy into your life. Because I feel I really like to focus on, I call them like pockets of joy. Those pockets of joy that we experience, like you're not at your destination yet. You're not where you want to be, but you got to experience a little snippet of joy. Everybody deserves that. And you deserve to focus on that. And I think, it's kind of like you get from one stoplight to the next stoplight to the next stoplight. Eventually you get to where you want to be. And
for sure.
And you look back, I think you appreciate that drive
for sure.
a lot more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have found that, through reminding my clients to your point, celebrate, first of all, acknowledge, identify and acknowledge even the smallest microscopically sized accomplishments, acknowledge those strides and take a moment or two to celebrate those strides. Because not only, so the outcome is important, but so is the journey, equally important. And when you reach your outcome, you're able to look back in retrospect and say, hey, wow, I did a thing. I did a few things. And every little box that I was able to check along the way, that's what led me to the ultimate goal. So it's not just like, I blink my eyes and I'm here. No, it was a trek, and I'm darn proud of that. That's number one. And then number two, I think by taking time to celebrate and acknowledge those pockets of joy, it's also esteem building. It helps the client build self-esteem and a sense of, self-efficacy. Like I can do this, whatever I put my mind to. May take a minute or two, I may have to, take a detour here and there, but ultimately I'm capable. That's esteem building. It's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it helps lighten up what feels like such a heavy life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I use the example of, in high school, obviously you're always working for graduation, but then, 10 years from now, when you look back, graduation is like 0.01 of the memories you have about high school. And it's those experiences like prom and, going to your classes and your friends and all of that, and that's what the road is, those experiences. And I feel like, yes, the outcome, like you said, is important, but so is that journey. And we often remember, I think, more of the journey than the outcome.
Very much so. Very much so. Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, my last sort of question / discussion point with you is you are Soul Tender's continuing education or CE coordinator. So I would love to hear how that journey for you started, when it started, and, what you're doing with it today. Like, what is your role? It's very exciting.
Yeah, I'm the CE coordinator. We started doing courses. I think I was one of the first ones to do a CE course for Soul Tenders a while back ago. I was still in North Carolina, so this must have been a while back ago. And then, maybe like a year after, I took on the role of being the CE coordinator, just to help, because we want to grow this. And I think all of our courses that we have done have been so amazing, and so helpful to our practices. And I think we want to just continue building on that. And so my role is to really help facilitate that for the instructors, anybody who has an interest. We all have skills that we can share. There's always something about us that I think make us unique as therapists that we can share with others that is really, really helpful for others to learn and practice. And so my job is just to make, doing a CE course isn't that simple, or you just kind of show up. There's different elements that have to go into that in order for you to have that course. And so my job is just to make it as easier,
wonderful,
easy as possible for them. So that looks like maybe talking about, what they would like the CE course to look like, or what their interests are, how they would like to format their course, how many days, how long, do they want to do just one course or a set of courses, and just getting them from point A to point B.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you foresee, expanding on that role that you play? Do you see building on that in any way, or is it kind of just manageable where it is right now? I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, are you thinking ahead down the road? Do you see any other possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just seeing where this goes. I'm having a lot of fun actually doing, these courses and being on the, just being on the back end of all of these courses. But I enjoy it. It's a part of my role as a therapist that it doesn't involve just doing clinical work and face-to-face sessions. Anything that has to do, I think, with just the field is really, like even podcasts, like it's just, it's fun to do these things. And so I don't know what the future looks like, but I'm open to whatever.
You're open. Yeah. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. Okay. Is there anything else about you that you'd like us to know? Any other takeaways?
No, I don't know.
She's like, I don't know. I'm just here. I'm here.
I'm just here.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, you are a wonderful person. You have so much to offer. It has been my pleasure to chat with you for a little bit today. And so if our viewers or colleagues or a combination of both have any questions about your CE coordinator position, or if they have any questions about you as a professional, what email address might they contact you?
They can contact me at my email, my Soul Tenders email, lsantana.ip@soultenders.com.
Okay, perfect. Okay, wonderful.
Or they can email provider relations and they will refer them. They'll send them.
Right. That's right. Okay. And same for me, as always. I'll end by saying that if anyone has any questions specific for me, I am reachable, cmajid, cmajid.ip at soultenders.com. Or as Leslie said, you're free to reach out to provider relations at soultenders.com. But once again, Leslie, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been a pleasure. I just really loved this conversation. I've enjoyed myself so much. And I'm looking forward to meeting you hopefully next week at our Soul Tenders Mixer on Friday, August 18th.
Yep, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.